right, Tim, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast here today. I know you hail from Detroit. I'm down here in Virginia. A little bit of a climate change difference, but this time of year, not so much. But anyway, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it, and for all the stuff that you're doing in the world of mobility, which we're going to talk about here extensively.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, excellent. Well, one of the things, and maybe this is a pseudo quote attributable to you, because obviously we've worked together in some capacity, but the future of mobility isn't always decided in Silicon Valley. It's decided at City Hall, and I don't know if that's a quote directly attributable to you, but I believe it embodies the spirit of your interest in mobility. And would like to hear your thoughts and comments on that.
Yeah, it definitely does. I worked for the state for a little over 10 years in the economic development space. Shortly after college, was focused on bringing high-tech industries to the state of Michigan. When I left there, I went to a nonprofit focused on commercialization, accelerating commercialization of these types of technologies. And then for the last 4 years, until I just recently departed, I was working for the city of Detroit under Mayor Duggan to bring those innovations to life in the city of Detroit, right? So I've got a lot of various viewpoints that all complement each other on this topic. And one of the things that I don't think enough people understand is how important it is for the local community to participate. And participation doesn't just look like drafting an ordinance or giving a blessing or something like. It means showing up and engaging with the company, right? As you mentioned, you and I have done a little bit of business while I was at the city of Detroit, and one of those topics was to deploy autonomous vehicles. And so, we had to come and meet with you, and your company put together a fantastic proposal, and you won that bid. But as part of our negotiations, we had to really talk about, hey, where are your capabilities at? What are we looking for, and how do we create the right type of environment to get us to the finish line, and the first finish line? Not the final finish line, because you got to take steps to get these technologies out there. But if we're not showing up to engage with a company or an entity in this high-tech space to really figure out what the state of the art is and what it takes to get it from where we are today to where we envision the future to be, long distance in the future, then we're really missing the mark, and we're making it a lot more difficult for these fantastic companies to start, to grow, to create the economic impact, both for themselves, for the people they employ, for the communities they participate in. So, and this is everything from autonomous vehicles to connected infrastructure to the scooters that people rent in a lot of these, major metropolitan areas. So it's a really, really important topic. And actually, I'm in the process right now, based on all these years of experience, that a lot of people ask me questions about this. I'm in the process right now of actually putting together a book that I hope to complete later this year and get out there and start to help kind of change the perspective and enlighten the audience, which is economic developers, local municipalities, even startup companies, right? How do you engage with the public sector, right? How do you talk to each other, and what does it actually look like, right? Because a lot of people are going to assume that you have to make some sort of grandiose type of gesture or action, and again, it could be as simple as just having a conversation. So that's, again, it's something I think is really important, and I think if we did more of it in this country, we would really speed up the implementation, and not just the speed of that implementation, but actually the accuracy of what the community is looking for, right? Addressing those local community challenges in the right way. Because the solution here in Detroit is not necessarily this exact same solution that you're going to want in your community in Virginia, right? Or
That's right.
that some of our friends are going to want, out in LA or down in Houston, right? There's going to be some nuance. There's going to be some differences. The only way you get there, you can use the same starting technology, but you're going to have a slightly different implementation path. And the only way you get there is through those types of conversations.
Well, that's an excellent series of points, and one of the things that I've borne witness to and have seen is sort of like these worlds colliding, if you will. A lot of AV tech companies, and obviously I come from one, but also others that I've seen, come forward. They have a solution and they're trying to fit it to a problem, right? And it's a classic engineering sort of mindset sometimes. In autonomy, it's a little different because we know that there's certainly some applications, but what I'm really interested in is, and then on the customer side, in this case, from your perspective on the city side, there's, problems that need to be solved, and mobility is a broad envelope of things that need to be addressed. One subset of which is, automation. And what I'm curious about is what is like a local community's perspective, or like the city of Detroit's perspective, when they come to sort of to this conclusion that, hey, I think we need something automated, or and then they start looking for solutions. Like, what is that? How do they get to that point to say, hey, maybe we should be looking at autonomous vehicles for transit and for mobility for our community?
Yeah, so I can only speak for Detroit, because I'm sure there are some differences, based on locality. But in Detroit, we were, I guess, we were very fortunate. We had a very vocal community, right? And so, and quite honestly, the city of Detroit had been surveyed, right? The community members about what their needs are, what the gaps are, so many times over the past, decade or two, right? So we had a lot of historical data to work from as well. And then, so trying to address the community desires, that's where we get a lot of our information from, right? The direct feedback from the community. And this, is everything from, community events that we hold throughout the year as a city, representation at city council, right? Individuals going to city council and speaking up about what they think is important, all those types of things. The other side of the coin that doesn't really get talked about too much is, what is the strategy of the city, right? So, for far too long in the city of Detroit, we had a number of people in our education community that, when they were raising our students, because Detroit, we've risen from the ashes, right? Detroit today is far different than Detroit, 12, 15 years ago. You can see it in photos. You can see it just in the way that the community operates. I mean, come visit Detroit. Like I know everyone has, probably heard, 100 negative things about Detroit throughout the years. But hopefully over the last, 10 or so, they've heard, 50 to 100 positive things, because things are really in a much better space now. There's a lot of room to go, but we're really happy with the progress that we've made. So the point being, though, is, excuse me, we recognize that for so long, our education system has told our students, your future is outside the city, right? We're gonna educate you here. We're gonna prepare you to leave. And if the proof is in the pudding. I mean, look at the number of years of declining population here in the city of Detroit. So we as a city knew that that's something we had to address. Well, how do you address it, right? You address it by bringing young people in. And in order to bring young people in, you need something that they want, right? And young people today want to live in a place with exciting technology, with exciting things to go and do and experience, and the systems that connect all that to make it easy to access and quite frankly, just fun to engage with. So when we look at that, which is a very important thing to try and make sure that we're planning for the future, and we combine it with the feedback that we've collected from the community for so many years, we start to look and see, where are there overlap, right? Where are there things that we can be doing that can address more than one problem and set us up for, success long term, right? Because we want more and more people to move to Detroit, to choose Detroit, and we want those that are here to stay, right? To see a pathway to staying. So by bringing new technologies like autonomous vehicles, like drones, and many, many others, we are creating new opportunities for new types of jobs, for new types of services, for new types of exciting experiences. And that all plays a role in how the community itself grows, how we plan for our future of economic development, how we plan for our future of workforce development, how we plan, our policy development, quite frankly, right? So, there's a number of different levers that we can pull as a local community. It's not just, the traditional economic development has always been how much money we can offer you in incentives to help your balance sheet, and do we have a great quality of life? Like if I'm being really, really simplified about it, that is what traditional economic development focuses on. It is not the right type of solutions for high-tech space, right? Because there's so many other problems. I could give you all the money in the world, but if my policies completely block you from being able to execute anything, it doesn't matter. I've just lit that money on fire, right? There's no
Right.
purpose to me doing that. You'll come here, you'll use my money, you'll develop your product, you'll leave, right? That's like the worst thing I could do is just waste it, right? So we need to be kind of going back to the point we talked about earlier about how the community needs to be engaged. The local municipality is where these technologies need to be really kind of focused and further developed. That's why, right? We need the local community to step up and think differently than the traditional economic development model.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so autonomy in that sense is certainly brings the high tech, exciting
Absolutely.
edge to transportation. Is there also, I guess, what are some of the return on investment considerations, about that? Like, is it the expectation of just increasing fluidity of people getting around? I mean, just comment if you can comment on that, like specifically the automation function, on the autonomous function, and how that autonomous vehicles can bring economic benefit or to the community, aside from just it sort of being an exciting, and it is, and it's a job making activity into the area.
Yeah, so a great question. And honestly, I think it's a really important one. So let me tell you about a different AV program that we ran here in the city of Detroit. It was a federally funded program, and it was called Accessibility, right? The D for Detroit, right? And what we did was we launched a shuttle service specifically for older adults. So I think it was our 62 plus population here in the city of Detroit, if I remember correctly, and individuals with disabilities, right? So it was paratransit-esque, right? It was slightly different in terms of what type of service we provided, but we were trying to target kind of that demographic that's very similar, because in most cases, they're considered the ones that have the most to gain from something like autonomy, okay? And so there's a couple of things that we really wanted to address. We ran a year-long pilot, which was much, much longer than we had seen in any other city, at least here in the U.S. And our initial assumption was that we were going to have a tough time getting people to actually get on the vehicle, right? Because they're like, oh, I have a computer driving the car, I don't know about that, especially, the older population. And when we held a number of workshops, and I was actually dumbfounded because when we asked the question, like, hey, are you guys comfortable riding in an autonomous vehicle? They're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We want to know it's reliable. We want to know it's going to show up on time. We want to know that it's convenient. And they were just like, it was an afterthought that a computer would drive the car. And we were like, well, really? Time out. Wait, hold on. We thought this was going to be the big hurdle. So the community was so obsessed with it because these are people that, they have to rely on a loved one or on a friend or on the neighbor down the street to get groceries, to get to a doctor's appointment. We talk with some health insurance providers, and actually Delta Dental helped to sponsor this program. They put some money in to help us get another vehicle, and they were really interested because the number of missed appointments really add up, right? And it comes at a cost for the insurance and for the actual provider of the service, right? The dental cleaning facility or what have you, right? The office. So they saw it as valuable to make an investment if they could reduce the number of missed appointments, right? And we found that this extrapolated into other types of healthcare appointments too, primary care and specialty care and all these other things, right? And then for the actual individuals, right? If they're not receiving the care, then their quality of life is not where it needs to be or should be or could be, right? So we found this really interesting. It wasn't our first assumption, but we really drilled down into, okay, there's layers of value here that we could potentially kind of put on top of each other and get more participation and support. So we found a pathway to potentially build a stronger community financial support, quite frankly, right? More levers and mechanisms to pull to help fund these types of technologies and help grow them. So again, it was a year-long program. We consistently surveyed our users. We had a 5 out of 5 star average rating, right? Which is huge because I think we had like 700 reviews, from this. So to hit, 5 out of 5 stars was very surprising and very exciting for us. And when it came down to the last month of the service, right? Everyone, we told them all on day one, this is a temporary service. This is a pilot project. All your information is going to really help us determine how we might implement a service like this long-term in the future going forward. When we gave them the notice, hey, we got 1 month left. Just want to make sure everybody's aware, right? We're going to be, winding it on the service at the end of this month. In the best way possible, the community revolted. They called the local news. They went to their local community events. They went to City Hall. They complained like crazy. Do not take this service away from us. We love this service. We need this service, right? And so, we were very, we were surprised. We were pleased though, right? This is the right type of strong community feedback. This is providing value in a way that they had not received before. Quite frankly, a lot of them, they were more supportive of having an autonomous vehicle pick them up than a lot of the human drivers that they had experienced. Because those human drivers, in some cases, they were rude. In some cases, they didn't provide the right level of support for the individual, right? And so this is a little bit of an oxymoron because you might have someone in a wheelchair that they didn't help them get in the vehicle the way that they should, right? Or they didn't, they made the person who was relying on the service feel a little less than because they were using the service or just, right? So there were some human interaction things that certainly needed to be polished. And so we're addressing that kind of on our existing systems, but at the same time, like we're getting this feedback that they have a preference towards, independence, right?
Sure.
So a lot of this really interesting feedback and data that showed us we've hit a certain, sweet spot in terms of what we were trying to address. We've got strong community support and buy-in, and that actually led to very quickly strong discussions between my office, which was the Office of Mobility Innovation, and the Detroit Department of Transportation, right, which operates the bus system, the paratransit system, and a few other smaller networks. To really talk about because OMI, Office of Mobility Innovation, existed to kind of pilot the technology and then help transition it into the permanent department hands, right? So our life cycle with the technology is envisioned in the maybe 1 to 3 year range, right? And then at some point that needs to get graduated into the permanent department, and then we take on the next technology, right? So that's the way the system should work so that these things actually scale and move through, right? We shouldn't own it in perpetuity. That's not beneficial, right? So before I left, there were some very strong conversations happening internally, including with external funding partners, to try and bring on what's that follow-on service going to look like that's more permanent and more long-term. But that was a really exciting opportunity to get some really strong feedback from the community, to implement something that was exciting and new. And the benefit is it creates the jobs that young people and actually we had a number of older, we called them safety operators, right? So as Paul, in the city of Detroit right now, we mandate that any autonomous vehicle that we fund has to have that safety operator behind the wheel. Okay. The number one reason is not because I don't believe the technology is safe, but it was because we knew that people needed to rely on the service, right? So if we get a really bad snowy day and the autonomous systems they're not quite there yet to be able to handle that, no problem. Flip those off, human driver, we keep operating, right? But it also creates that cushion for people to kind of transition from where they are today to that fully autonomous future, in a much more kind of human interaction type of a way, right? But again, it creates the jobs, it creates the opportunity, it creates the ability to address so many other people's gaps in their transportation, improve quality of life, improve the access to services, right? So it really becomes this sweeping benefit We started with one goal, right? But then we identified all these other kind of sub goals, if you will, and we're able to package those very, very nicely and develop our future strategies around trying to incorporate as many of those benefits as possible.
Interesting. I mean, thank you for that kind of insight into that process. I think so. What's also, of course, interesting to think about is what are some of the exit criteria from sort of the mobility program to the production world? Like what are the gating factors that determine, okay, and maybe this hasn't occurred yet, or maybe it's in the process, that these programs, just thinking generally, not specific to any particular program, but in general, what makes going from the pilots or the things that the Office of Mobility and Innovation would do to transition into the production, or the what did you refer to it as, the operational
long-term implementation, right?
Long-term implementation. Yeah, that those departments, and I don't know what department or departments are involved with that, but what gates that, and what's the communication like between the Office of Mobility Innovation and those departments to that end?
Yep. So the short answer is it depends on the department, right? So we talked in that last example, something that's very much in the wheelhouse of our Department of Transportation. Now, a curve on this would be, we worked very, very closely with our Housing and Revitalization Department, okay? Because a number of the individuals that were participating in the pilot project were in, assisted living facilities or things of that nature, right? And our Housing and Revitalization Department actually worked with the developers, the operators of those facilities. In some cases, there were some publicly owned facilities, that they had a little bit more oversight over. And so, we were helping to connect those dots. So when it was Department of Transportation, right, we got to obviously focus on funding, but we have to make it long-term financially sustainable. Okay. I'm going to say something that some people might, be like, oh, why'd you say that? But the reality is, if the program isn't profitable, okay, if you can't make money doing it, it will not exist. Okay. So, and profitable does include public funding. All right. So, public transportation, the vast majority of it, because I'm not a full public transportation expert here, but my understanding is the vast majority, if not all of it, is heavily publicly subsidized, right?
Sure.
So it's extremely difficult to make that truly profitable. Now, but as an operator, you can't just give away your services for free, right? You can't just provide transportation services and bring in less money than it costs you to operate the service, because you can't, operate on the goodwill of the people that provided you the vehicle or sold you the equipment or whatever it is. So we have to find a way to be profitable. That doesn't mean that I line your pockets and you become, billionaires in your own way, right? But you have to be able to operate and create a profit, even if it's small. Okay.
To stay alive, right?
So financially sustainable, right? Yeah. So that was the term that we use. How do we make sure that this is financially sustainable? And then the next thing we got to do is make sure that it's actually designed in a way, because we think we know a lot about these technologies and how they're going to be implemented long term, but times change, man. And the example that I often give is the scooters, right? People 9 years ago, roughly, woke up one day and boom, there were scooters in the streets. Whoa, what's that thing, right? Like overnight, just happened because the companies didn't ask for permission; they asked for forgiveness, right? And it worked. They grew across the entire globe in that way. So that stuff can still happen, right? So we can think we know what the future looks like, but times will change and new technologies will come out. And I mean, you're well aware of it, trying to design an autonomous vehicle that can predict and anticipate everything that it's going to encounter, right? There's going to be new stuff that comes up. We call those the edge cases. So we got to kind of try to operate where we know, but understand there are going to be edge cases. There are going to be things that come up that we haven't prepared for. So we need to be ready to be adaptable. All right. So that's just declaring, what you don't know. Right. And then the other thing on the HRD side, the Housing and Revitalization Department, we had to work with them to really help them understand, hey, this could be an asset. right? This could be a new way of kind of promoting how we improve the quality of life for individuals in these types of facilities, right? In these types of living circumstances. And there's a lot of them across the city of Detroit. We have an aging population. And we actually have one of the highest disabled populations in the nation too. I think 125,000 roughly individuals in the city of Detroit, right? It's almost 20%. I mean, that's huge. So, and a lot of them are face mobility issues, right? So, we try to connect the dots, and then we try to help them talk to each other. Because again, our existence as the Office of Mobility and Innovation was to be this additional capacity on top of all the other departments. We could have created it inside those departments, but the thing that would have happened, that we were, and I didn't create the Office of Mobility and Innovation. I took it over. Okay, it existed for about 4 or 6 years before me. But the reason it was created was because there was this realization that you needed an office that could kind of float between all the others and help bring everybody together, right? Because these topics cut across so many different departments, right? And then as we get things out there too, now we're working, and we've got traffic engineering that operates our traffic signals, right? We have our police department and fire and EMS that first responders that need to know how to engage with one of these vehicles if there's an accident, right? There's all these layers. So our office existed to try and help connect those dots and make sure everyone was communicating with one another, until it became just, hey, this is business as usual, right? So once those things started to become more commonplace, once those conversations were happening on a regular basis, we slowly kind of walked ourselves back and said, okay, you guys got this. Let us know if anything comes up, and we can be a support services, type of an entity to help you with the next challenge. But you're at a place now where you can take this over, you can bring it internal. But we did anything and everything that we could to help. And in some cases, towards the end of my time with the city, we were talking very heavily about changing city ordinances. We had written a few in my time there, but there was a couple more that were addressing things like parking standards for the future of transportation mobility in a city like Detroit, and what changes we could make to make our environment more friendly to the operators of these services, to the developers of the next housing and community developments, and so on and so forth, right? So yeah, the very short of what the long I gave you is, we really focused on financial sustainability first, because we wanted to make sure that these programs were there for the long term, right? They had a way to continue to exist. It wasn't a 3-month or a 6-month service or even a year, right? Like I gave you that example before, and the people revolted because it worked so well. It improved their quality of life so dramatically that they didn't want it taken away, right? And I don't blame them. And in my opinion, the worst thing that we could have done as an office was to give these little spurts of great experiences and then to never find a way to bring them back, right?
Yeah.
Because you get people's hopes up and then you drop them like it never even happened, right? So like that destroys confidence. And that's why it's so important to focus on that financial sustainability of the service. So.
Yeah. Well, it also dawns on me, I mean, an office like the Mobility and Innovation Office is important to extract from technologists and AV providers things that can be done now that may not be as commonly aware, or things that could be done for the infrastructure. And I don't know what kind of conversations you've probably, I'm sure you've had some with regards to vehicle to vehicle and vehicle to infrastructure communications and methodologies that can actually, although maybe be expensive in some cases, but accelerate, the adoption and of these programs. And I guess what kind of role, and collaborations have existed or exist to kind of get that bidirectional feedback as to, hey, here's what the technology can do really well right now that maybe we could be bringing into these programs.
Yeah, so one of the other foundational principles of the way we operated at OMI was we can create just as much value for the private sector entity as we can for the public that we're trying to work to solve their challenges, right? Their gaps. So, providing the feedback that we've received from the community, helping to address the knowledge gap for the technology provider and how the city actually operates, right? What our requirements are. And then in some cases, taking feedback from the private sector partner to understand how we can modify our policies, our regulations, to make them easier to navigate without creating, giant gaping holes and issues for the community, right? Obviously, safety was top, foremost, most important. So we had to make sure that we were still working to address and bring these new technologies in without creating any, major, safety issues or concerns. And that required the participation. I always love a good video bomb, right? So a good
Yeah, I've got 4 unruly studio mates these days, so it keeps it real though. It's just Absolutely. Like fish in a fishbowl.
But yeah, so we really we needed to. We not just wanted to, but we needed to work with the private sector in order to help address those kind of challenges. Because quite frankly, again, if as a private sector you're not prepared to work with the local municipality, it makes it a heck of a lot more challenging for us too, right? And that's friction. And friction, slows things down. And that's not what we want. We want to help to move things at the fastest, safest possible rate, right? And you don't know what you can accomplish until you try. So in a lot of cases, one of the things I mentioned, in that book that I'm writing, I think people really need to understand, both in the private sector and the public sector, what success looks like. Success is not only limited to, we launched this project and it worked exactly as designed, right? Failure is data. Failure is information on what you might have overlooked, what you didn't think about before you started because you didn't know what you didn't know, right? Failure needs to be looked at as a way of continuous improvement, right? Now, I have a saying. My saying is fail as fast as possible. And what that means, and I might have read that from a book. So if there's someone out there that has that quote, I'm not trying to steal it, but I do use it. And the point is, if you fail as fast as possible, you keep your failures small. Small failures are very manageable, right? But if you wait, if you're my customer and you ask me to design something and you give me, a few pieces of information and I go off and silo myself for 6 months and design what it is you asked for and bring it back and say, ha, here it is, I'm done, right? And you look at it and you go, ooh, there's a lot of changes I would have made to that, right? I took some of the information, but just by human nature, you didn't give me every single parameter, more than likely, right? And there's some parameters you might not have been thinking about. Okay. You might not have realized you didn't think about what you weren't aware of at the moment. So if I do that, that creates a big failure. But if I take your information and I start, and I know it's gonna be a 6-month process, but I check in with you every 2 weeks and give you an update, you're going to be able to give me those small course corrections and give me additional feedback so that I can make sure that I'm not, I'm addressing those challenges and designing the product exactly the way you want me to, right? So that's kind of the difference. So success is found in small failures, right? Success is found in just having a conversation and developing a deeper understanding, right? So I think we really need to rethink how we, or just become more aware. Maybe it's not a full rethink. We're not trying to recreate the wheel, but we're trying to just make sure we're heightening our awareness of what it looks like for success to happen, because so much has happened so fast. Innovation is accelerating around us. And it's very, very easy to just make assumptions and then to just run, right? It's much more difficult to be disciplined and to try and take a strategic approach so that we can find that success, quickly, without, running into those big failures. So I'm not sure if I answered the question the way you initially intended me to, but
no, it was good. And yeah, the fail often, fail early, fail often philosophy is an important mantra. I agree. And iteration, especially in this space, and this is where I think sort of the communication between cities and just communities and these technologists, that kind of conversation, that kind of iteration is so critical, because the expectation may be, if a city's used to sort of creating a contract and having like a building, something built that's, a commodity that's been done, for, hundreds of years, or even 10 or 20 years, right? And in sort of repeatable fashion. This is, as you say, it's new technology. It's incredibly complex. You're basically embedding what humans do and how they react and how they drive a vehicle into a vehicle. So it's heavily AI leveraged, and now and as you know, AI is accelerating at a remarkable pace. And a lot of these companies are, incorporating this technology to try to improve the product, but it's all happening so fast. And so these aren't commodities, right? These autonomous vehicles, they're not Roombas either, right? Those were difficult, sad to say, iRobot filed for bankruptcy, but like that was like the most successful robotic product in the United States and in the planet, right? And so, it was simple, and these are complicated machines. And so I think it's important that these AV companies have a safety critical discipline and know sort of how to articulate, the limitations, and why I think, it's important to kind of consider operational design domains as the terms applied to define, that characterize the environment in which these vehicles can and will operate successfully, so that you can bring real service, tangible service to that community and to that zone of operation, wherever it may be today, as opposed to saying, hey, you can just take this vehicle and launch it everywhere. There's no level 5, what they call level 5 autonomous vehicle on the planet, right? None exist. And even as we've learned recently with Waymo, one of the most successful robotaxi programs out there, and and just amazing people, amazing product. They still rely on human intervention, right? They have some remote operators in the Philippines, but as they kind of announced, but they have they bring remote teleoperations into the program, and so because there's so many still edge cases in the situations that they encounter, and they're top tier, right, in terms of what they've been doing. So yeah.
I want to interrupt just for a second. I want to go back to the contracts topic. Okay.
Yeah.
Because this is a really interesting topic that most people might just glaze over. Okay. But one of the biggest challenges working with a municipality is contracting. All right. As you're well aware of. What I think most people might not realize, the city, when it writes a contract, is trying to cover any possible edge case scenario where it could have liability. Okay. And it is trying to, I've witnessed this a number of times in my time with the city of Detroit. It's trying to build something ironclad. And then once it builds it and you start to execute, it wants to hold you, right? And I'm saying it as a city because that's the mentality, and it's everywhere, right? But the business as usual is it wants to hold you to the letter of the contract, right? When you're working in new technology spaces, that's really challenging, right? Again, you don't know what you have until you start to deploy it and test it and try it. And then you figure out what you have, right? You got hypotheses, but you got to get out there. So it's really difficult to create a contract as a city and have your attorneys, it's their job to protect you against all these liabilities and potential issues, to get comfortable. Okay. So we, in my office, we executed a good number of contracts, and many times we had to work with our legal department to really help them understand why we needed to create some space, right? Why we needed to create some grace. And it's tough. So for a city like Detroit that's already done it a number of times, we've begun to change and shift the culture within the legal department, within procurement department, within the number of entities, because it's not just one. There's multiple layers there, right? And they exist for a reason. They exist to make sure that We're not doing anything, that we shouldn't be doing. There's no favoritism, right? We're following the law in how we need to procure, and it should exist that way. But when you've got these innovations that are disrupting this whole process and this paradigm, you've got to start somewhere to begin to figure out how that friction exists and where to create a little bit more space without giving too much, right? And so, Detroit is now prepared to engage with companies like yours and others in the high tech space, but many, many other communities are probably not. So this is another big challenge that we're going to see play out over the course of the next, I'd say, probably couple decades, right? The bigger communities and the ones that want to be a little bit more proactive are going to be at the forefront, and it's going to be because they showed up. It's going to be because they actually started to engage. It's going to be because they started to understand, what the challenges were and where the friction existed in their own, public organization. But the contracting piece is a really, really important one that, quite frankly, it can make or break a startup company, right? Because you could get stuck. Oh, great, I got this $1 million contract. I'm in the negotiation phase. I'm so excited about it. It can take you 6 to 8 to 12 months to negotiate that contract with a local municipality if you don't know how to navigate that friction, right? In many cases, I mean, we were fast because we worked really hard. We had very strong participation, and we had a very strong directive from the mayor on down, right? Make this stuff happen. Make Detroit a desirable place to be, right? And so because of that leadership at the top, we were able to get stuff done. I mean, in some cases, as quick as a month, right? And that's lightning fast, if I'm being honest with you, right? And you probably know that, but your audience, might not understand just how fast that is. I would say standard, if you're engaging in a high tech space or something like this with the city where you've got data that's being shared, I mean, you should be expecting 6 months, right?
Yeah.
You should be lucky if it's less than 6. But it can always be longer than 6 too, because stuff happens, right? But contracting can really play a significant role in any innovation space within a local municipality, and especially in terms of the viability of a startup. If you're really targeting the public sector as your customer, right? Just waiting for that contract to be executed so you can start drawing down on and performing, so you can bring the revenue into your organization. That can really make or break you. So.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I mean, and you're spot on. These things can take 6 months to a year, and we've seen things that from award to contract, it's been almost 3 years. Not Detroit, but just in other situations, and it just takes and things happen along the way, as administrations change. Okay, now there's a question about funding, is this funding now going to be available? All kinds of things happen that you just have zero control over. And so it's, it can be, it can be a timely process, but I can just say it's also incredibly rewarding when you deploy something and then you see the people experience this, and you get their feedback, and their lives are changed, in some ways. And that's certainly meaningful. Those are like the intangible things that from a business perspective that matter to the people who are everyone who's involved, right? The providers and the folks providing the service. But yes, you do have to stay sustainable, and it's an certainly an interesting process. Well, I guess I'd like to rewind real quick, because I know you didn't start in City Hall, but you started, and it's this is a podcast about autonomous vehicles, robotics, AI, and more, right? And so sometimes the more is even more interesting. And you got your start with and we don't have to sort of go too deep, but just to understand your background with like batteries, and I guess and how that how I guess you were running battery simulations at GM. What was sort of interesting to you about energy storage, and how did that sort of transfer to what you're doing in the mobility space, maybe with electric vehicles and more?
Yeah. So So I got into batteries my final year of college, and through a professor that I had. Um, and I saw it as a very interesting space. I always grew up automotive family. Always wanted to go work for one of the big three here in Detroit, and got my shot. I'm always conflicted when I think back. It was my dream job to go work. I worked at GM, as you mentioned. In their battery lab, doing cell level testing to try and predict how long these batteries would last. Right. I was only there for about 4 months. And then I got introduced to the state of Michigan's economic development arm, the MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. This was back in 2008. And, they were telling me, hey, we see the future is going to be, at least in some part, electric. We see, in the conversations with these automotive companies, most of them are saying, hey, we're not going to make our EV investments in Michigan. We're going to make them down south. And so there was some panic about, hey, like this is our number one industry, right? It defines our state. If we lose these investments, are we losing this industry, right? And so, I went and I sat down with the team, and was just kind of having an open conversation. Hey, I think this is what's important, and this is what we need to focus on, and et cetera. I was just speaking freely, kind of as a young, academic, if you will. It was mostly academic still at that time, and they made me an offer to come work for them. And I never dreamed of going to the public sector. Okay, I'll just be honest with you. I have called myself for a number of years a recovering civil servant. So I'm finally hitting the recovery stage, where I'm no longer a civil servant. I'm going to be joining the private sector here next month. But that time, what I really focused on was, okay, where's the greatest opportunity to make an impact, right? If this industry is going to exist, and at the time it existed not at all in the United States, right? We didn't make batteries like this. We made, double A's, triple A's, that type of stuff. But we didn't make these lithium ion batteries that were going to be in these larger pouch cells and all sort of stuff. So no one knew how to do it. We had no talent and experience here in the United States. So I, joined the state and developed a strategy for who we were going to go and target first. And it was the battery manufacturing companies, and what we needed to do to support and serve them to ensure their long-term success, right? Because again, no financial viability. You've thrown all this money at a topic, and it gets wasted at some point in the future. So what was happening when I first joined was just we need battery companies. And so I said, okay, well, where are they going to get their materials from? Who are they going to sell to? How are they going to transport, once they build a battery, right? What rules, regulations exist on the transportation of these, materials, right? Because early battery technology, there were some concerns, right? You've seen laptop fires and things like that, right? So there are chemistries that can, all but reduce or eliminate that. But largely the technologies we're pursuing at the time, they still had those inherent capabilities to catch fire, right? So there was a number of topics we had to address. And what I realized over a number of years was my approach is a systems-based approach, right? We have a need over here. We have a desire for a certain outcome over there. How do we connect the dots in a way where they can speak to each other, they can function sufficiently, and everybody can benefit, right? So we were very successful in my first, 18 to 24 months with the state of Michigan. We secured a little over $6 billion in investments. It was something like 16 or so projects at the time. And we just had a strategy to align ourselves with federal programs that were supporting various opportunities, right? And at the time, like that was new. Right, the federal government wasn't throwing that amount of money at investments in these types of technology developments, and so hey, if it's going to get spent somewhere, let's make sure it gets spent in Michigan. And so we were very successful in that regard. Fast forward, we now have the most robust battery manufacturing in the country here in Michigan, with a number of different players, and regardless of electric vehicles, right? I still do believe that at some point in the future, light duty vehicles, all electric makes a ton of sense. Um, that transition is probably going to happen a lot slower than people back in 2008, had predicted, or at least, desired. Um, but I think that it's definitely going to play a role. And then that technology is also going to play a role in a number of other things, right? It's going to play a role in AVs, or I'm sorry, drones, right? Aerial vehicles. It's going to play a role in, our military, right? In terms of power capabilities. It's going to play a role in consumer electronics. It's going to play a number of different roles. So it's at the time we called it a critical national need, to understand how to develop these technologies, understand how to manufacture them. And then so we went from there, and really kind of built out a robust system that could have broad applicability for additional other industries and services.
So with that, so you're coming in then into, of course, the Office of Mobility Innovation at some point thereafter, and was electric vehicle, EV platforms, was that always a critical part of any sort of automation program as well, or autonomy program, that they somehow be linked, or was there sort of, because I see it very often linked,
Yeah.
Whereas it doesn't have to, but of course, for whatever reason it is. What are some of the motivations behind that?
Yeah, I've never built one of those vehicles myself, or worked for a company that did. But in my conversations with industry, it often came back to, if you have an electric vehicle architecture to start with, you have so many electric systems, sensors, and all that sort of stuff, right? If you were trying to run that off a conventional vehicle, you'd have to add additional, battery capacity to support those electrical loads. You'd have to add additional, alternators or whatnot to continue to recharge those batteries. So again, not impossible. We can certainly do that. Your company, does it, on a number of different vehicle platforms. But a lot of what we heard was that there were some advantages if you can start from that architecture, right?
Interesting.
And so they just simply tapped into those advantages. But there's no mandate, there's no permanence on it. Has to be an EV kind of architecture base to start with. But there were some opportunities to leverage the fact that you had plentiful DC current available on the vehicle. In some cases, I think they'd have to include, maybe some power electronics to step down voltages and all that sort of stuff to meet the voltages and currents of the smaller electronic equipment, like sensors and cameras and all that sort of stuff. But it just created a greater capacity where you didn't have to worry about other things like adding batteries, adding alternators, that sort of stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that it's a really interesting philosophy. I mean, I know that, EVs have their benefits for many other reasons, but like, from the AV side, how you get your power, be it from, ultimately an electric powertrain through conversions, or from a non-electric powertrain, could be hydrogen, it could be gas, diesel, through, alternators and sort of other additional onboard batteries. The by and large, I think the technology remains the same. It's just there's how you get that power is one piece. The one thing that I would share with you is that a lot of electric vehicles platforms, some are really, it's a relatively new powertrain, right? For sort of it's been around a while, technically speaking, but from a scale perspective, there are a lot of electric vehicles that are relatively new to this space, and so they haven't been some have been more reliable than others. Some have been terrible, some have been great. Ones from manufacturers like Ford or whatever are more pretty stable. But so from an AV perspective, when you're building this autonomy technology, if you're building it on an unstable or relatively new vehicle platform, the complexity, combines, right? And sort of like, what your what technical issues may arise may compound,
It's
so
kind of like
it's
early cell phones, right? Or early smartphones, right? We
yeah,
had everybody, and their neighbor putting out their own version of a smartphone. We had different, app stores. We had different, right? So some of them were great. Some of them, weren't super reliable. And we've largely consolidated that. So I think, we're kind of at that, early BlackBerry. I don't know if you ever saw one of those Sidekick, phones where the screen flipped over, you had a keyboard underneath.
absolutely,
Right? It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I think we're kind of like at those days in terms of EVs. We're not quite to the iPhone. What are they on? 17 now and whatnot. But we'll get there, right? But I mean, it's a great point for a company like yours to invest in, a platform. That's a massive investment. It's a lot of engineering work. That's a lot of cost, right? And so if that vehicle technology, disappears, right, or dramatically changes, that probably means additional, revision work for you, or you have to scrap an entire platform and move to a different one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's constant change, right? I grew up thinking that when you're young, the world seems like chaos because you don't understand it. And then when I graduated from college and I started my first job, I realized no, no, no. The chaos is everywhere. It's just a matter of how well can you adapt to it. And you can never fully control it. Like you just can't. But how well can you position yourself to remain, kind of mentally in control of certain types of chaos, and the ones that you can't, you accept that you cannot control that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, chaos is everywhere, and it's going to continue to exist, and it's going to pop up in new ways each and every year because again, this innovation cycle continues to accelerate. AI is going to throw so many changes at us. I don't think we fully understand what AI is really going to mean for us as a society. Like I truly don't believe. I think there's a lot of people that think that they do, but I don't think that we fully understand exactly how much it's going to change our society 10 years from now.
Yeah, it's a knowledge revolution for sure, of an accelerating ilk that, yeah, we don't. It's hard to understand. Um, so on, to that end, right? Again, there are these stable EV platforms nowadays, and then there's been interest with some, some, and we worked with a what we might call a bespoke or a purpose built shuttle manufacturer at one point, right? They unfortunately went out of business, but they had a great, it was a beautiful product. I mean, beautiful to look at, beautiful to be in, but for various reasons, economics and otherwise, and sort of new technology wise, adapting that AV technology into this sort of new platform was a difficulty. And maybe, I don't know if you had this direct experience in your position, but maybe you saw it in other cities and localities, communities. Do you see sort of what do you think about like these bespoke or purpose built shuttles and the interest that like why they might have an interest in those? And do you think that that helps or hurts the sort of autonomy case by trying to fuse the two?
Today, I think it's kind of a moot point, right? Like I think it hasn't played out far enough to help us understand if it's fully beneficial or not. I think long term, I expect it to be beneficial. From thinking from the perspective of a city, right, where most of my experience comes from in this topic, we want to contract with as few entities as possible, quite frankly, right? Because it's less people that we got to chase in order to get something done. And so if you've got a purpose-built vehicle with all that technology integrated, whether we choose to outsource the operation of a service or we choose to purchase the vehicle and then internally operate it ourselves, it gives us that ability to do so. So there's definitely some benefits that I would expect to potentially come from something like that. That being said, um, there's a lot of requirements that we got to make sure. It's not just any purpose built vehicle, right? As you mentioned, some of them, they're not working out so well, right? Um, I'll tell you, in our experience in the city of Detroit, anything less than 25 miles per hour, it's worthless, right? Because all you're going to do is clog up our roads even more. The service is going to be so slow that no one's going to really want to ride it. We've got plenty of 25 mile per hour streets, but we've got, several that are, 35 mile per hour. And we have a number of highways all throughout our city, right? And, we're extremely large landmass. It's something like 140 to 150 square miles. The city of Detroit is. And, to get from one end to the other can take you 30, 40 minutes in some cases, right? Like, in that's, sometimes hopping on a highway too, right? So like, we're really, really large. So if we implement a solution that is 25 miles per hour or less than that, we're running into a number of new challenges that aren't things we're excited to run into. On top of that, we want to know, certain things about the vehicle as well, right? But quite frankly, today, again, no steering wheel is not an option for us. We need to have that safety operator behind the wheel. And the city of Detroit's probably going to want to see, a couple of years worth of experience before any system we implement where we have any type of liability towards. So we're going to want to see a couple or more years of success of like zero intervention from the safety operator, right? In order to feel very comfortable about, just deploying that thing and making that the new norm. So,
Right.
So yeah, there's so much happening in this space. There's so much, that can accelerate, right? If you have a purpose-built vehicle and, the sensors on this vehicle, Tesla Autopilot might be a decent example here, right? Because they've got, I think current version is version 4. And then they had, version, 3, 2, 1, et cetera. Well, each time they put the new hardware on the vehicle became exponentially better, right? And I've seen some pretty exciting videos of the current version of their hardware. I haven't experienced the autopilot myself, unrestricted, but I've got some friends that are very much encouraging me to go for a ride with them. So I'll probably do it here soon. But the point being, you can't take your Gen 1 vehicle into Tesla and have them put hardware 5 on it, right? At least not as far as I understand. If you build a purpose-built vehicle, right, the technology is moving so fast, right? Is the vehicle going to be worthless in 2 years because the current version is just so much better, right? I saw that with a number of my friends that wanted to get into these types of vehicles, right? They kept, do I wait and get the next one because it'd be that much better? And they delayed their purchase for, in some cases, years, right? So I think if that's something that has to be addressed by whether it's a third party, upfitter, or whether it's purpose-built vehicle, like you got to figure out as an entity how you're going to provide, continued service and support for that vehicle. And if there's any ability for modularity such that you can swap out components to put in the newest, latest, and greatest, right? Or maybe there's I got my iPhone here, right? If my iPhone, I can turn it in for the next model, right? Is there some way where they do that and then they take these older vehicles and deploy them to other communities that are just getting their foot in the door, or, in terms of autonomy, right? That's going to really need to kind of be figured out. But I do think that there's long-term, that feels like the right direction to have, purpose-built vehicles. But I can't say with any level of certainty, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And the safety operator is interesting because, or the, just the onboard concierge or whatever one might refer to it, because with a lot of these services, as you mentioned, paratransit or what have you, people might need help getting on and off the vehicle.
absolutely.
If someone has a medical situation, right, as part of the operations, you need to get to them in some way, be it from on board the vehicle or from, in some proximity. And so there's that, right? Like, sort of the case for maybe it's a shift of roles as to what that, the driver is able, becomes more of an onboard, you know, concierge, I guess, is for lack of a better word. Yeah.
That's when I first took the role with the city of Detroit. My number one task was to bring autonomous vehicles to the city. Excuse me. In working with the mayor, we really drilled down, and I said, sir, robo-taxis is not going to be an option for the city of Detroit, in the 1 to 2 year horizon, right? Our four seasons climate is just too much of a challenge with the current generation of technology. I said, but however, what we can do is we can prepare the city for an autonomous future by, through engagement in the community, familiarity with the technologies, exposure and awareness with our various departments, like our emergency services we had talked about earlier, right? All that sort of stuff, contract procurement, all of it. And so what we focused on was, I said, hey, we can focus on public transit as a way to bring the technology here, to expose our community to it, to prepare ourselves. And in that case, because what's the whole purpose of autonomous vehicles in the robo-taxi sector? Oh, we can bring costs down because we don't have to pay the humans to drive it, right? I mean, that's been the pitch, right, since I can remember. And at a high level, it makes sense, right? But to your point, right, what happens when you've got someone who's in a wheelchair that needs to get on one of these vehicles, right? Is there a autonomous arm that comes out to help? Probably not, right? It's far easier to just have a human on board. It's far easier. So when you focus on the public transit, you can, because you have people in wheelchairs, that sort of stuff, you need the human to actually help them, board the vehicle, get off the vehicle, what have you. It's not a waste, right? It's not this line item that you're trying to get rid of. It's a cost that is part of your business model. You just make that job a heck of a lot more pleasant for the person who has it. They can actually engage with the people. And then the people who are riding that service, they love the service because, who doesn't love that to, hop on a bus and have a smiling driver, and ask some questions. I mean, I do it when I travel typically, right? I hop on an airport shuttle, to go from one terminal to another, or to go to, get my vehicle that I've rented or something like that. I ask them, oh, what do you love about the city that you're in? It's an opportunity to have that conversation, right? Even when I get in an Uber or a Lyft, here in the city of Detroit today, a Waymo, here hopefully in the future, well, Waymo won't have a person in it, sorry. But, an Uber or Lyft, I have that conversation. Say, hey, how long you been doing this? Blah, blah. It's just nice to have a conversation, right? So it makes it more personable. So the role will change, hopefully in a very positive way, and we'll come up with new things that person can do to create value for the people who use the service, right? Maybe they'll talk about, what's on the route. Maybe they'll offer, hey, we've got this promotion with this restaurant over here. We partnered, it's because you're riding our shuttle, here's a 10% coupon for, your next lunch or something like that. Or, oh, here's this event that's happening in the city of Detroit. We want to make sure you're aware you can use this service to get to it, right? Just simple things like that help to improve, general quality of life and the kind of the experience, for the users and especially visitors to our community. So that was an area for us to really kind of dive in and participate and offer programs like the one that your company participated in, and really kind of chart the path. And quite frankly, I had some conversations, with Waymo before I left, and they publicly announced they're coming to Detroit. They've already begun testing, and they're planning to launch the full-scale service year round in the city of Detroit. I don't know how much more is public than that, so I'll stop there. But the one thing they did tell me was Detroit is on our list because of all the work you guys have put into preparing the city for an autonomous future. And I highly expect that Detroit will become the very first city with a true 4 seasons climate to get Waymo fully autonomous, zero safety operator behind the wheel. And so, and I mean, that's big, right?
Yeah.
It's a testament to the types of things that we've done in order to get us ready to welcome a provider like that, right?
Hmm.
And my hope is that, they're very successful, that they, set up, operations and employ a ton of people in the city of Detroit, and give, young people an opportunity to engage in a really new, cool technology, right? And develop new skills and all that sort of stuff. And then those young people, they transition into other, companies that come and locate to the city of Detroit, because we have that talent now, right? Those experiences, and so on and so forth. So I really, truly believe this is, using this example in its own little, microcosm. I think this is the first domino, right? The
Yeah.
first domino that's going to fall, that's really going to help, us build a beautiful, bright, future here in the city of Detroit with these types of innovative technologies. So, I'm really, really, happy with the work that we did, when I was at the city, and I'm really excited to see what continues to happen. At some point, you kind of get to a stage where you either need to, the child that you've been looking over has grown up, and you need to, let the child go off and expand their wings and, become the person that they're going to be, right? And so in many cases, my time at the city was kind of like that. I had a certain, number of goals and ambitions that I really wanted to accomplish. I accomplished those over the last 4 years, and I had to have a conversation with myself about, hey, am I going to continue to operate this, or am I going to hand this off to the next person, so that they can, continue to grow it? And I think the time was just right for me to step aside and for someone else to take it over. So I'm really excited to kind of see what happens.
Well, that's fantastic, and good news about Waymo and robo taxis. And do you think, like, with what these with in Detroit maybe, and specifically, that there will continue to be, or different modalities still of transportation, like buses and paratransit and transit vans, in conjunction with taxi like vehicles, much like I guess
Absolutely.
there's always been, or do you see that kind of like one shrinking versus the other? I mean, just candidly.
So, I mean, I think that there's going to be, I think the biggest hit we're going to see, quite honestly, is going to be in personal vehicle ownership, as these technologies perfect themselves. Okay. So, there's a certain level of convenience, um, not having to pay for, car insurance, not having to pay your car lease or your car, loan payment, just being able to have everything on demand. That kind of seems like where the incoming generation is focusing, right? They want, um, largely, it seems like they don't want to own much, right? They want to have experiences and that sort of thing. I don't know if that's the right strategy, but that's kind of what, I feel like I'm seeing play out. But I do believe that individual car ownership is probably where the numbers are going to come from first. Um, but I don't see a future where public transit completely goes away. There are certain economies of scale, that you get from putting, large groups of people on things like buses or on trolley cars, or, those sorts of things. If you took all those individuals, and what I mean by economies of scale, let me be specific. If you took all those peoples and you put them instead, into individual Waymos, you're gonna have a ton of Waymos on the road, right? And then that's going to increase congestion and that sort of thing. So I think the long term is building the right balance. So, we're far from balanced today, right? Let's just be honest. There's a lot of congestion. There's a lot of things that we can improve upon, and technology is one way to solve those things, right? And so connected infrastructure, we kind of very loosely, tangentially touched on, said the words a few times here. But, if we had, deep connected infrastructure throughout an entire city like Detroit, where we could actually monitor, quantities of vehicles, for things like congestion, and that information, how it could be used to potentially help with routing, right? In many cases, Google will do this today. I use Google Maps when I use mapping services. They use GPS of the phones, to tell you whether or not there's backups or not. They don't actually have the traffic data. They got the phone user data. And so if a phone is sitting in the middle of a highway like I-75 here in Detroit and is stationary, well, they're going to make that section of I-75 red, right? And
Yeah.
more traffic than usual, right? Unless someone reports an accident. Oh, there's an accident up ahead, right? Like, so there's data inputs. So, But if we get better with systems like that, we can help, with routing. We can help design the right types of complementary services to fill in gaps, right? City of Detroit, again, very large landmass. We're kind of shaped like a wheel and hub, wheel spokes, right? So our main thoroughfares all kind of come out from the city center. And I think it makes a ton of sense for our buses to operate up and down those main spokes, right? And in some cases, cross between them on certain routes. But once you start to get, further and further away from the center, right, the distance between the spokes increases, right? And so when you get to the farthest points of the city of Detroit, those distances could be measured in, tens of minutes to get from one section to the other. Well, maybe that's a good spot for us to put smaller services that kind of connect those different loops, or connect, 2 or 3 spokes together, right? Such that, one of the issues that we have is if you take this line down to the city center and you got to jump on this line to get to work, right? You have to wait at that transfer station for a really long time. And it might take you, over an hour to get to work when it's only, 15, miles away or something. It's like, hey, that's terrible. That's a long time. But there's no convenient way to design the bus system to go across that, because then your routes now are way too long, right? So we have to find ways for these things to complement one another and to provide, broader types of services to fill in those gaps, right? And again, some people, they might not feel comfortable on one type of service or another for some given reason, right? I mentioned a little bit earlier about, the people that were not necessarily happy with the drivers in some of our paratransit services, right? And I'm sure Detroit's not the only city that has that. I'm sure there's cities across the country, but that was one piece of feedback that we got, right? That type of individual, might be more comfortable in a different type of a service, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a system of systems. And I think we're far from, a balanced system today. And I don't think we have all the data we need in order to design that system just yet. But I think we're smart enough right now to understand that is kind of the direction, and to start collecting the right information to figure and engage the community along the way, right? You got to create the right balance in terms of engaging with the community, because if you listen to everything that they say and follow it to the T, everyone's going to complain about something. You'll never get anything done, right? You have to accept you can't make everyone happy all at once, right? But over time, you can make this group happy, and then you can address this group over here, and then that group over there, right? And you can continue to compound your successes, and make more and more people happy, and provide more opportunity for those that have gaps, right? Especially in the transportation sector. So
I think I'm remembering this correctly, but I think it was René Descartes who, French philosopher, mathematician, said something to the effect like you can only have one architect of a complex system. I'm completely paraphrasing, and of course he would have said it in French anyway. But it's kind of, it feels kind of true in my direct experience too, that when you have a very complex system, you need an architect who can kind of provide a unified vision across these complex systems, and that's got to be difficult. And in any sort of government, situation, city, when you have multiple, people who need to, because they're representing people, have to have input into this process. So who arbitrates this, in a situation like the city? Who kind of, sounds like you had a coordinating role, but who decides and makes the decision that this is the right mobility architecture for the whole city to tie these systems of systems together? Or does that just not exist?
I will say it doesn't exist everywhere and all at once. Okay. So especially when you start to play in, these newer technologies, right? Because the existing architect of the existing system didn't have this solution at their fingertips when they designed it. So it's inherently it's disruption. But let me give an example, because I think this point is another fantastic point that the audience really needs to understand. So early on, when I started working for the city, we were part of a team before I joined that had bid on the country's first public wireless charging roadway. Okay. And so what this technology was, the same way that you can take your iPhone, you can put it down on a wireless charging pad and it charges your battery, right? We were deploying that technology into our roadway. Okay. Now, no electric vehicle. This is R&D and testing and piloting type of a platform. That's what the purpose of installing it was. No car comes from the factory, even with an option for a wireless charger. Okay, so the company that installed the roadway, Electrion, had to provide the wireless receiver for the vehicle and integrate it into the vehicle. Okay, now we talked about the use case for the future of parcel delivery. So think FedEx, UPS, Amazon. Now, two things. Number one, not only how do you get all three of them to agree on a single, platform or process for moving forward, architecture, if you will, but how do you get them to agree to do that, not just in the city of Detroit, but in every other city across the country? Because if you have one solution for Detroit that is not the same as the solution for LA, that is not the same as the solution for Houston, that is not the same for the solution for Richmond, Virginia, right? And I can keep going. You now start to see that these companies have to work and create special plans, architectures for every single community across the country. It's an impossible task, right? Everyone will go bankrupt doing it. It doesn't make any sense. So, but the only way to get to consensus is to start somewhere. So the answer to your question becomes, realistically, it's not left to an individual leader that just happens to hold a certain role. It comes from an individual who has the strength to have a vision. And if there's one thing that I learned during my time at the city of Detroit, it is the only way to make real progress is for someone to have a vision and to fight for buy-in to get that vision to reality. So we were fortunate enough at my time in the city that I had the support directly from our mayor, right? A mandate, if you will, to get certain things done. And I was able to go to those other department heads and say, listen, I know I'm going to be disruptive. That's by design, okay? I'm not here to just tell you to, oh, well, suck it up. But I'm here to say disruption is going to happen. What can we do working together to try and make that disruption as palatable as possible, right? What can I do to help you prepare today so that when the disruption arrives, it's not as painful as it otherwise might be, right? So, and this is a lot of what I'm going to cover in my book as well. How do you actually create the right partnerships and structure and, again, architecture, if we want to use that word, to get that buy-in, to deploy in the right ways, to ensure success? Because if it's just a person with a vision on their own that just wants to go and beat everyone else up, you might be successful, but it's going to be a really painful process along the way. I promise you that, right? But if you show up and if you understand that you're going to be really disruptive and you try to bring your partners along and create partnerships, not just people who fall in line, you're going to have a lot bigger success, in my opinion. So, and you're going to get there faster, just inherently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a really, really important topic for the audience to understand too. Is it's not any one single individual that exists today, unless that individual is so passionate about having that vision. And you can't just have a vision and say, well, this is what I'd like to do. You got to be passionate about it. You have to push for it. You have to fight for it. And that was a lot of what I was required to do in my role. I made a lot of friends along the way. I made a few, people that didn't like me very much either, right? I don't blame them. I was making life very difficult for them. But it was because I was asked to be, doing something very specific and I was trying to execute that. So, on my side, definitely no hard feelings because I know that it's just part of the job and trying to get things done. But, not everybody feels that way. So you gotta, if you create more friction than you need, it's only going to take it longer to get stuff done. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because like this technology of automation can affect so many things too. For example, um, I know that, or at least I've heard from others that, it could be very expensive to build parking garages in premium locations in a city and or just anywhere, right? And so if you could have parking garages built or places to park in other areas and have automated vehicles like almost like automated people movers just kind of circulating from the garage to a sort of a location where maybe that garage would have otherwise been, right? Or some center part of the city that you can overall reduce, and maybe those are lower costs, smaller shuttles or what have you that are just kind of circulating, that you can lower the total cost of and have more parking facilities for people who want to visit and come into the city or work in the city, patronize the city in some fashion, and like, but that's got to be now you're coordinating, city planners with future city planning with this automation technology and trying to make the two coordinated in some fashion. And so that's a difficult architecture problem. I mean, have you seen those kinds of discussions about like the intersection of how we're going to plan for parking and plan the city based on this future availability of autonomy?
Absolutely. Right. So, you're probably seeing a number of things across the globe where communities are taking old parking structures and converting them into adaptable, flexible spaces, right? In some cases, it's really expensive to do that because parking structures are designed in a very specific way, right, with very specific needs. But one of the things that I talk with a number of parking providers in the city of Detroit about during business hours, they're full, they're jammed, right? Because people come down to work. After business hours, right? They still have some demand, especially in a space like Detroit. Like we have all four of our major sports teams, within like a 4-block radius, right? Like they're super dense down there. So that area, year round, I mean, those parking structures are packed. But you start to get just outside that area, right? Which in those parking structures that are right next to it, they charge a mint, right? They make a killing on the parking rates because of all those events. But when you get a little bit further out, right, it might be less convenient because I got to park and then I got to take a shuttle or something down, or we've got the people mover or the Q line trolley car here in Detroit, right? So those are some options. Those are fairly convenient, but there's more than just that too, right? So I've had a number of conversations with parking owner operators in Detroit about, hey, how do we get people who either don't need the parking structure for parking or people who don't own a car, how do we give them a reason to come to your garage, right? So two things that I want to use as examples. Number one, early electric vehicles, charging infrastructure was very, very difficult. We have a number of houses in Detroit that don't have garages. And so where do you put your EV charger, right? If you don't have a garage, you might also not really have a driveway. You might just have a walk up, like a brownstone or something like that. And so they, can I put an EV charger at the road for myself? Well, yes and no. No, because you don't own that parking space, so you can't be the only person who can park there. But like, yes, in theory, you could put one, install it out there. But if somebody parks in front of it, like, we can't help you, right? So, but hey, what about this parking structure that's right behind you that has, 20 EV chargers that are just sitting there overnight? What if that parking structure is willing to allow you at a discounted rate to go park and charge your vehicle there, every single night or when you needed to or something like that, right? But you had to be out by 7 a.m. Because somebody else might need the spot, right? Or you pay a fee, for not evacuating in time so that they could sell that spot to someone for the day, right? So we talked about new business models and things like that. And then for people who don't own a car at all, right? Drones, aerial mobility, I expect to really kind of heat up here in 2026, especially in communities like Detroit. But when you start to think about our downtown urban core, and you think about how you get drones, we've got a number of apartment buildings and things like that. How do people, in those places get access to drones, right? The roofs of those buildings were definitely not designed to be a landing pad to accept packages and that sort of stuff, right? What about the roof of a parking structure? It's wide open, right? They're typically not, 50 stories tall. And, maybe you could drop off a package on the roof and, whether it's a courier or maybe it's an autonomous robot that takes it down to the first floor and puts it in something like an Amazon locker, right? And then boom, you get a text message, I live right by this parking structure. Oh, my package has arrived. It's in, locker number 17, and here's my code to unlock it, right? And I go down there. Now I've created more commerce around this parking infrastructure. Maybe it's to help help with reductions in parking that they've seen due to other modalities. Maybe it's just to help increase their profitability so that they can make parking more affordable, right? Who knows? So, but competition always creates opportunity for lower costs, right? Opportunity. So, but those are some of the things that I think could really make a difference, and some vision statements, right? So those are a couple of visions that I had during my tenure with the city. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic, and it's a topic that virtually every community across the country can probably understand and appreciate to some level, is the parking challenges, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think autonomous vehicles play a role, but there's other services that can play a role on the parking side as well.
Yeah. And you talked about drones. There's another cat. This is the part of the sideshow of the Driven podcast is the parade of 4 unruly office mates that occasionally photobomb the podcast. So, but zooming out a little bit, you mentioned drones, and at first I was thinking, well, is he talking about flying cars? Because that's coming, right? I mean, there are folks who are working on that, and in a real tangible fashion. But what does all this mean? All of this sort of automation and AI as it relates to moving people and things around a place like Detroit. What does that mean for the future of Detroit? And so with your sort of perspective, what is like, it's always fun to look into the crystal ball, but what's 10 years from now in your mind look like for Detroit?
So my hope is that 10 years from now, the city of Detroit is far more densely skilled in software hardware integration, right? Because that's what these technologies really are, right? It's integrating software and hardware together. We've got hardware in spades. Software, we have a few niche strengths, I would say. And I think we have a lot of opportunity to grow those. So my hope is that this really starts to, in order to operate these services, let me connect the dots for the listeners. In order to operate these services, you have to collect and analyze tons of data, right? And so in order to do that, you need, capable data engineers, software engineers, all that sort of stuff. And so by Detroit being willing to be open to new technologies, new innovations, work with and partner, in the true sense of the word, partner with innovators in these spaces to figure out how do we implement in a community like Detroit? How do we define what that implementation looks like? How do we then create a model that is scalable to other cities? And again, financial sustainability at its core, right? That is going to move the needle, not just here in the city of Detroit, but nationally and globally. So Detroit has an opportunity, given those characteristics, given those the willingness to participate, right, to translate that into skills here in the city. And so that, I mean, my parting vision, from my time at the city was really to try and help put us on a course for something like that. So I think it's doable. And there's a number of individuals. The thing that excites me the most, there's a number of individuals in the city of Detroit that are really working on the bridge between youth development and these high-tech technologies here in the city of Detroit. Youth Tank Detroit is one shout out I want to give. Google Code Next has a presence here in the city of Detroit as well. But like these organizations are really working with youth in Detroit to help them understand there is a future for you in the city of Detroit. You do not need to leave if you don't want to, right? You can raise a family here. You can access all of the same types of opportunities that would exist in those other communities right here in your own backyard. And I hope that continues to grow. Any way that I can, support, those types of things in my future capacity, I'm certainly going to be looking into it. But I think that's a really important factor that I'm really excited to see about the level of engagement here in Detroit. We had just, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. I want to say 2. That Youth Tank Detroit team had actual, I think they were mostly high school students that put on a full-fledged conference, a full day event. They looked up and invited speakers. I attended and spoke at the conference, from local, municipalities, state government, local technology companies and providers, right? Advocacy groups, things of that nature, right? And they did a full day conference that they put on. They designed the programming for it. It was really exciting, right? They prepared questions to ask the panel groups and actually had like moderators that were, from the youth groups and stuff. Like, it was really cool. So to see that level of engagement, to see them show interest and have excitement towards these opportunities existing in their backyard was really, really impactful to me. And honestly, it helped to shape my desire to try and figure out what can I do to support those types of activities in any given role that I have. So I think it's really critical, no matter where you exist in this country, for those types of things to be happening. And I'm really excited to see them happening here in Detroit as well. So I think that's going to contribute to Detroit's future as well, because these students have visions that they're developing, that they're going to be super passionate about, and they're understanding ways that they can get out and advocate. They can, what jobs they can go after to try and help implement change and impact, outcomes. So yeah, I think the future is bright here in Detroit.
Yeah, I've of course been up there frequently, and I've gotten a great glimpse of that. Like at Michigan Central, there was very much a buzz and of spirit there that was encouraging with young folks and old, alike, convening and coordinating on new ideas and just the exchange of these different sort of groups that were in there. That was just a great atmosphere for that. So it's interesting. Some people with AI and generative AI, it's, as we now know it, people don't know where it's going to go. I actually think it's going to be, personally, I think it's going to be very empowering. I think it gives individuals the ability to do more and to realize some of the things that they would like to produce, right? Not just science and coding but like art too, right? Like it can help in that regards. And I kind of got a glimpse of some of that at Michigan Central too. Some folks working in that capacity. But do you think, like, ultimately will autonomy, increase sort of freedom and the capabilities to do things, or do you see some of the hazards of it, centralizing control, right? This is sort of like a more, how can we guide it to do good things for us versus, you know, not so good things, right? And so that's just the classic question with any sort of technology. But where do you think it's kind of going with generative AI and how it fuses in with this, mobility infrastructure and an entrepreneurial ecosystem that you speak of?
You know, I'll be honest with you. I'm not 100% sure how I feel, right? I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity for it to do good. Um, but it's also anything built by humans is flawed, right? So, at the end of the day, humans are the original designers of AI. And so I do not expect AI to become flawless in its own right, right? You can already see that in a number of the different AIs that are out there. If you ask them all the same question, you'll get different responses based on the way that the AI was developed and what its parameters are in terms of trying to search for answers and package those answers for the public, right? All of my friends use AI, right? It is the speed at which it has been adopted is honestly quite shocking. And so not surprising, but the reality of it is shocking. So, yeah, I expect in certain areas, like autonomous vehicles, right, and the AIs that are used to kind of do decision making, all that type of stuff. I don't have real big concerns, right, and so I think that it's going to do well. My biggest concern in the AI space in general, to be honest with you, is we are creatures, humans, we're creatures of comfort. We don't really like change. So my biggest fear is that people start using AI, they get really comfortable using AI, they get, I'll just use the term right now, overly confident in the AI's responses and answers. And boom, therefore that's our new society. That's the way things operate, right? So, if everyone used the same exact AI and asked it the same types of questions, it's probably going to get the same types of response. So I think it's good for there to be a lot of different models out there, at least right now, to provide perspective.
Yeah.
And we also need to understand that, each AI is kind of fine tuned to try and be a certain type of thing, right? One AI might be really, really good at helping with creative things. Another AI might be really good at doing legal review searches. Another AI might be really good at, being the, like the person that you could talk. Oh, I have a plumbing issue in the house, or I've got a switch that I need to replace. Tell me how to do these simple tasks around the house, right? DIY type stuff. That's what I was looking for. Right. So I think we need to be aware that, each AI is going to be fine tuned for its own purposes. That, there's probably not going to be like one holy grail, but I do think that there's going to be certain populations that are just going to be really, really attracted to, hey, I use ChatGPT and I've just always used ChatGPT, so I'm going to continue using ChatGPT. But yeah, so me personally, I've used AI a few times. I actually have downloaded the models onto my home computer to run them locally, so that I can kind of play with them and figure out my prompting and all that sort of stuff. I'm a little bit. I don't think there's any way to fully blockade yourself from this, but anytime you send like any personal data, personal information, health information, photos, etc., to AI, I mean, it's theirs forever, right?
Yeah.
They keep it. But if I run it on my local computer, right, it continues to be mine. So I'm not sure how those types of things are gonna play out in the future. I do think it's gonna proliferate every angle of our society, right? I think it can do a ton of good. I am uncertain as to whether or not you will have, and I've talked with a number of people in this space about this, if you'll have your own personal AI and all your data is kept on your devices, which would be ideal, in my opinion, or if we will give up privacy and just allow the broader models to know everything about us.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, there'll be forces pushing for the latter because there's money and that, and then there's, of course, people need to push for the former. So I agree with you that I'd say like as a tool, like, of course, people use it in a lot of different ways, right? They ask it personal questions, and of course, it's amazing. I mean, you can get questions about the health and what have you answered, and that are you need to sort of seek alternative advice, but it's sometimes interesting to see what its responses are. But from a tools perspective, as it applies to generating like software, it's pretty amazing, right? I will say that, being in the domain that I'm in, and I seeing the ability to generate new behaviors and capabilities that would have taken years, what would have taken like a year can take a week, that order of magnitude to develop. But then of course there's always testing, which testing is going to take as long as it's going to take anyway outside of the AI. But it's really amazing. And so from a mobility perspective, I think if people are applying it correctly, we're going to see an acceleration of eking out so many of these edge cases and bringing behaviors to automated vehicles at a pace like that was 10x and soon to be 100x of what it was deployed hitherto. So it's pretty amazing in that regards.
Yeah, I'm interested to see who creates the AI models that can help do kind of what I was talking about earlier, right? The complementary systems for, okay, you could have shuttle services over here, you could have major bus lines over here, you can serve this gap over here with this other type of a service, right? Like I'm really interested to see the first one of those that kind of comes out at scale. If one exists, I'm not aware of it yet. But is tuned to kind of take all the different data inputs that exist and make sense of them in a way where it can create that output. So, the quote that I think I'm quoting this 100% accuracy that I really, really like is, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. So again, there's no predictive analytics that gets everything 100% right? There's always flaws. There's always mistakes in there, right? If it were perfect, then we'd always know exactly what the weather is going to be, and we wouldn't, I think pretty much everybody makes fun of meteorologists, right? Like, you tell me it's going to rain and it doesn't rain. You tell me it's not going to rain, it does rain, right? Whatever. At least here in Michigan. But again, all models are wrong. Some models are useful. I think we just need to make sure we remember that, so we can figure out, how is this model useful for us, right? In what ways can we trust it? In what ways do we need to take, some of its information, with a little bit of a grain of salt, or, with additional scrutiny, if you will, right? And so, but over time, the models will get better and better. But yeah, today, I'm still of the opinion, I'm looking for, how it's useful. And so.
Right. Well, that's fantastic perspective and advice, and it's 100% true. And well, Tim, I really appreciate your time here today. This has been great. I mean, and to bring the perspective and the depth of knowledge and experience that you've had with bringing automation into cities is just extraordinary. I really look forward to reading that book. So please send me an early copy. No, whenever it's available, let me know. I'm definitely interested in reading that, and
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you for everything you've done. In Detroit, I'm a big fan of Detroit. I can say that I don't follow football lately, but I used to be a Detroit Lions fan. So
it's a hard road to be a Detroit Lions fan. It's been an exciting few years. So
I know, and it was hard being living outside Philadelphia, right? So
yeah, I'm sure. So,
but thank you so much. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully, we can do this again sometime in the future. I'll let you know as soon as I've got the book completed, and you'll get one of the first copies.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you, Tim.